The FBI has now put out a nationwide APB, all points bulletin, for a white Chevy van with New Jersey registration. Written on the back is Urban Moving Systems. Apparently there are 3 male occupants. Let's repeat that. The FBI has now put out an APB, an all points bulletin, nationwide. They're looking for a white Chevy van with New Jersey registration, and written on the back of the white van are the words Urban Moving System. Apparently this van is carrying 3 male occupants. Obviously, if you see this van, you're asked to contact the FBI immediately.
They're shooting. They're driving around shooting. They arrested 2 Iranians. Oh, shit. They're shooting. I'm serious. It's like you should have saw me running.
I told you. Did you hear that they have a bus? They caught a bus,
like,
a buck or a truck.
A van full of bombs, right?
Oh no! Somebody said there was a truck. They had a picture of the World Trade Center with a plane flying into it. They caught it.
The third truck, which was obviously a diversion on King Street, which actually depicted a mural of a plane slamming into the World Trade Centers. And those 2 individuals were arrested. Obviously, this was a diversion to pull police in that direction, because no one would drive around in a truck with a painting of 9/11 on it on 9/11 unless they were purposely trying to attract the attention of the police to pull them in a certain direction.
With a mural painted of an airplane diving into New York City and exploding. I don't know what's in the truck. The truck is in between 6th and 7th on King Street. I said, I'll send the issue to the bomb squad, then full Westgate. The first airplane diving into New York, blowing up. 2 men got out of the truck, ran away from it. We got those 2 under. That's good. Did you listen? You didn't get any further on those 2 guys over there? You all right over there, Jake? Yeah, both suspects under Jake. We have the suspects in crib. Go in the van exploded. We have both of them under Jake. Let's get some help over here. Now, I'm sending you ESU there. I just want to make sure you and your guys are all right over there, Jay. That's all.
His comrade was a firefighter, was trapped about 500 feet in under some debris down West Street, and he turned around and said he saw a police officer walking with him carrying a 9mm pistol, and he asked him what he was doing, and he said that there were people in the area that were planting bombs after the planes had flown into the tower, that the bombs apparently, and this is just going on what one firefighter told me, police believe that there were bombers that were in the area after the planes hit the towers planting bombs, and that may have been what caused the further devastation. Are you still with me?
Yes, we're listening to you, Joe. It's just unbelievable what you're telling us.
Two suspects are in FBI custody after a truckload of explosives was discovered around the George Washington Bridge. That bridge links New York to New Jersey over the Hudson River. Whether the discovery of those explosives had anything to do with other events of the day is unclear, but the FBI has 2 suspects in hand, said the truck load of explosives, enough explosives were in the truck to do great damage to the George Washington Bridge.
Well, you know, Todd, it's really an amazing thing. Most of New York City's rescue operations and their police and fire departments have been concentrating their actions down in lower Manhattan, where the 2 planes hit the 2 towers of the World Trade Center. But some very intelligent and aggressive cops also stopped another terrorist attack from happening on the George Washington Bridge. CBS 2 has learned exclusively that 2 men are in custody tonight after being arrested at the George Washington Bridge with an entire truckload of explosives.
Reports we're getting now, 2 or 3 men arrested on the New Jersey Parkway. Deborah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. That is the information that I'm getting from 2 sources, that there was a van either on the New Jersey Turnpike or the Garden State Parkway, and that it was near the George Washington Bridge. There were 2 or 3 men who were in the van. The van was pulled over. It is not clear why the van was pulled over, but when it was, law enforcers found tons of explosives inside of the van. That is right now all I'm hearing, but again, 2 to 3 people in custody, and we are trying to get more information on that right now.
Deborah, I don't mean to put you on the spot here. Do you know where on the Jersey Turnpike this was? How far from New York City?
We do not know that. We are looking into that. There is one report that it was on the New Jersey Turnpike. There is another report that it was very close to the bridge, if not on the bridge. So again, these details all emerging, and we're trying to piece them together. But that's what we've got so far. 2 to 3 people in custody right now, found with a van filled with explosives.
Can you talk about this incident that came up on Channel 2 about some people coming across the GW Bridge explosives? Can you comment on that at all?
Well, I haven't seen the report, and I haven't heard about anybody coming across the bridge with explosives. Okay.
Have you heard anything about the van on the Jersey side?
Well, I've heard basically the same thing you have. We haven't been able to confirm it yet. They weren't near the bridge, to my understanding. If it in fact did happen, we're trying to confirm it through our detective bureau.
One more question on this.
South of 14th Street, that includes all bridges and tunnel crossings south of 14th Street. Those are closed down for
any movement south of 14th Street.
And you have not heard about any explosives on the George Washington Bridge or in the Lincoln Tunnel?
No.
Commissioner, it was in Jersey near the bridge. Is that your understanding? Do you know the jurisdiction?
Well, what we heard was Port Authority police stopped a van that might have had explosives in it. We haven't been able to confirm it yet. We're working on it. When we hear something, we'll let you know.
That's on the Jersey side, right?
It's on the Jersey side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and we'll be back. So we don't have to go through this.
I'm hopeful. Okay, what you have just seen there is Police Commissioner Bernard Carrick not confirming any reports at this point. Reports that we have heard that there was a truck loaded with possibly explosives near the vicinity of the George Washington Bridge, and he said that those reports have not been confirmed.
The police
they
department
are checking on it right now.
You heard John Miller tell Peter Jennings that he too had heard this from Port Authority sources. Again, Police Commissioner Bernard Carrick not confirming that anything had happened or any threat to the George Washington Bridge. We'll of course keep you posted.
And I could see the towers from my windows. And this is where I'm looking. And all of a sudden, down there, I see this van parked. And I see 3 guys on top of the van. And I could see that they were like happy. They didn't look shocked to me. They didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
Amazingly enough, we have found the moving company where the 5 Israelis worked. Was this building being used as a front for some kind of Israeli intelligence operation that possibly was doing surveillance on the Arab American community? Were there men celebrating or slapping 5s or whatever?
We had received an all-points bulletin, and I just happened to see the van and, hollered over to my lieutenant. I think that could be the van. We checked it out, and it was. We were all on edge, obviously, so I really wasn't looking to make friends with these people, and neither were the officers that I were with. Once we started talking to them, they were pretty much like, hey, we're not against you, we're with you.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
The 5 Israelis were detained for 10 weeks and finally deported on immigration violations after the FBI cleared them of any involvement in 9/11.
Joining me on the line is Scott DiCarlo, the police officer who stopped the 5 dancing Israelis on 9/11. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Hey Dave, thanks for having me, man. Basically, we had to shut down traffic on our highways to prevent traffic going east of our jurisdiction towards the city, to try to ease up the traffic issues, try to ease up pressure on the police departments that way so they could do what they could at the trade center side.
Okay.
I was posted on the highway. We were out there for hours just trying to work with traffic. The public had no idea what was going on, and we really didn't have full knowledge of what was going on. So tempers are flaring and people needing get home, but we weren't able to let anybody go east of our jurisdiction at that point. So it was a rough day, to say the least, all around.
So this was probably in the morning, and then in the afternoon, what happened with that call about that white van?
There was a bolo, which is be on the lookout for a particular van with, there's supposed to be a few occupants in there. And the bolo basically stated that this van may be on its way to destroy the George Washington Bridge or something like that, if I remember correctly. Blow up the bridge, perhaps explosives. So we were out there, and of course we were all looking for it. It just happened to come our way. There were several officers out there. I grabbed my sergeant, and I said, hey man, that's our van. It wasn't the exact plate given either. It was off by one numeral, I believe, and I'm like, it's got to be, it's just too close. So we ended up stopping them.
So you were the one who noticed it, not your sergeant?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, but I mean, we both were there. We were all there, so.
You noticed the plate wasn't right, so really it was you who eyed this?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Okay, that's significant. Because if you didn't have a very good attention to detail, then it might have just gone by and none of this would have happened, because this was a very significant part of the whole 9/11 mystery, and it continues to be. And that's why there's such great interest in this. You saw the van drive by on Route 3, is that right?
Yeah, it was coming off the turnpike and hitting the service road trying to get on Route 3.
Then what happened right after that? Were you close enough to run next to them? Did you have to get in the car? What happened?
Oh, no, I mean, traffic was basically rolling at 2 miles an hour, so we just basically stopped it, just got in front of it and stopped it.
You walked out in front of it and you stopped it?
Yeah, we just put our hands up and asked them to get out of the vehicle. They didn't listen, and we removed it.
Do you happen to remember where you were exactly? Were you on the driver's side?
Yeah, I was on the driver's side.
Okay, and did you have your weapons drawn?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you were pointing the weapons at the driver and you said, get out of the car?
Correct.
And the driver didn't listen?
No.
Now, you've been doing this for a while, right? How long have you been a police officer?
15 years now.
Why do you think the driver didn't listen?
To tell you the truth, I really don't know, but being that there was a possibility of explosives being in the vehicle, I wasn't completely.
Did you think about that? Why he might not have obeyed your order with a gun pointed at him?
Sure. In that brief moment, yeah, you think about it, and you don't know what's going through your mind. As I stated earlier, the bolo stipulated that there may be explosives in the van, so we removed them.
Okay, so it was him and it was a couple other guys. It was what, a total of 5 of them?
Correct.
Did you have any idea at that time the nationality of these men?
No, sir, but when we removed them, I forget which guy it was, kind of chatty, but hey, we're not your enemy, we're your friend. Our enemies are your enemies or whatever. At that point, he said they were from Israel or something. I don't remember exactly what they said, but it was something along them lines.
Did you think that was something strange for this guy to make, an unsolicited comment like that?
At the time, I didn't put much weight to it. If you're up to no good, you're going to say anything that make me feel better at that point, right?
I guess it just seems kind of a strange thing. On this website here that I mentioned to you earlier, historycommons.org, they tell this story here. They say, we are Israeli, we are not your problem are our problems, the Palestinians are the problem. And then it goes on. Yeah, something like that. And then it says, again, before the police have made any mention of the 9/11 attacks, another one of the arrested men says, we were on the West Side Highway in New York City during the incident. Do you remember if that happened?
Man, I don't.
Right. And then it says in this article here, in fact, it will later be determined they were on the roof of a building at Liberty State Park watching and videotaping the first crash into the World Trade Center. If this is true, for people to be filming the first crash might be indicative of the fact that they knew that something was going to happen. Did you get any feeling from these guys that they knew anything about the incident?
No.
Nothing.
No. I didn't see any video cameras in the truck. I don't know if these were the guys, that everybody claims was videotaping. I don't know that. Basically, my job was to stop it if this were in fact on the bolo, which is basically it. We didn't spend much time with them. The state police holding cells in the staging area.
So how long were you actually with them before the FBI arrived?
Maybe 15 minutes before we actually brought them to the holding area.
Sure. How were they acting when all this was happening? Did you take note of that?
They were under arrest and they were really happy.
Were they resisting arrest?
No, they didn't resist, but there were a lot more of us at that point than there were now.
That was a concern of yours, though, that there were only 2 initially and there were 5 of them, that things might have gotten out of control?
No, that never crossed my mind.
Did they come quietly?
Once they were in handcuffs, they didn't resist at all.
Were they chatty, like that other fellow was?
It just kept kind of saying, hey, look, we're on your side.
Then it says one man is found with $4,700 in cash hidden in his sock. Another has 2 foreign passports on him, and a box cutter is found in the van. You didn't have anything to do with looking through the van, did you?
No, I didn't see the van, but you can find the box cutter in the van and do that of the sort.
Right, sure. I mean, $4,700 in somebody's sock is probably...
I don't know if they're a moving company and they got paid. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not to speculate, you know.
I mean, all we can do is speculate. It becomes academic at this point. But again, to this day, 10 years after 9/11, people are intensely interested in you and what happened that day.
I don't see why they're interested in me. I told you before, I get a lot of interesting emails, you know, asking me about that day on my Facebook or my MySpace. And I have nothing to say. I mean, everything that I'm telling you is that's all we did. You know, we stopped them. You know, the FBI came along and interviewed them.
You stop them. They don't get out of the car initially for whatever reason or reasons. We don't know why, but they didn't. One would think that with a police officer pointing his weapon at you, you would do as he says, or she says, right away.
We transported them to the, like I said, the state police holding area inside the Meadowlands and Giant Stadium, and that's the last I saw them. I didn't actually see the FBI take custody of them. We left them with the state police there.
And that was it. You were done. Did you have to go back to the office and fill out a report, or did you do it right in your vehicle?
No, the report was done later. We were still out on the highway for quite a while.
When this happened, you probably didn't think much of it, right?
No, I didn't. Once we dropped them off, you know, my mind was on the devastation 7 or 8 miles away. You know, and the people that perished there and you know, all the damage and whatnot to people's lives, buildings and whatnot.
Did you find out later on the significance of these fellas that you stopped?
Yeah, but you know, as far as I knew, it was just perhaps we had the wrong van, if there was another van or whatnot. And you know, to this day, I couldn't even tell you if we had the right van, if these guys were the ones that were wanted for cheering or dancing or whatever they were doing, supposedly doing anyway. You know, I have no proof that that was them. I just stopped the van. It was off by 1 numeral on the plate, and we did what we could at that point. And if it wasn't them, then I need to apologize for them for you know locking up the wrong people. But I did what I had to do, you know, at that point, and what I thought was the right thing to do.
Did it get physical at all when you had to arrest them?
I wouldn't say it got physical. I mean, we just physically removed them from the van. I mean, they didn't resist, you know, in any way. We kind of manhandled them, put them in handcuffs, and did it as quick as we possibly could because as far as we were concerned, it was a very dangerous situation if there were explosives in a van, you know.
Mm-hmm. So you had to physically remove all 5 of them from the van. They didn't peacefully come out of the van.
They didn't fight, but they were sitting in the van. They weren't coming out quickly, so we got them out.
Did that seem a little bit arrogant to you?
I didn't think so at the time. You know, I don't know if you've ever had a gun pointed at you, but some people tend to freeze. Other people may do exactly what you want them to do immediately, and other people may freeze because some situation like that they've never seen before.
Based on your 16 years of experience, do you think that that was the case, that they were freezing, or do you think that there was something else to it?
I don't remember. It just seems like some of them might have froze. That was kind of the way I looked at it at the time.
Okay. In fact, what I had mentioned before about one man is found with $4,700 in cash hidden in his sock, another has 2 foreign passports on him and a box cutter. These are from news reports. That one in particular is from, I believe, ABC News. Mm-hmm. And these were factual reports, so these were the men. Another has pictures of the men standing with the burning wreckage of the World Trade Center in the background. Again, that's from another media report. All 5 identify themselves as Israeli citizens and claim to be working for the New Jersey-based Urban Moving Systems Company. In addition to the driver, the others are identified. Actually, 2 of them were brothers. I'm not going to go through their names because I can't really pronounce them and I don't need to. Mm-hmm. The men were detained but not charged. Again, this is from varied news reports. The next day, it will be reported that bomb-sniffing dogs reacted as if they had detected explosives. An investigator high up in the Bergen County law enforcement hierarchy will say in 2006, there are maps of the city in the car with certain places highlighted. It looked like they're hooked in with this, referring to the 9/11 attacks. It looked like they knew what was going to happen when they were at Liberty State Park. And that, of course, is from the Bergen Record. The FBI will later conclude at least 2 of the 5 are Mossad agents, and that all were on a Mossad surveillance mission. The FBI interrogates them for weeks. Scott, are you familiar with the Mossad?
No.
Okay. Well, that would be the Israeli equivalent of the CIA.
Okay.
They are held on immigration violation charges, but will be released 71 days later. Again, that's from ABC News. So these were the guys, and they were intelligence agents. And that's one of the reasons why there's still so much interest in what you did.
I didn't do much, man.
Well, you feel that, and you might really believe that, and I believe you do. But there are many people around the world that believe that what you did was crack open a window into who the real perpetrators of 9/11 are.
I can't be sure of that, you know what I mean? Like I said, we stopped these people, put them in a holding cell. That's all I know. I don't know what else to say about it, you know?
Right.
I can't say anything further about it because I don't have the knowledge. But, you know, that's what you're telling me. That's what I got to believe then, right?
That is the truth. These guys that you had the great fortune of arresting, of noticing, those were part of the Israeli intelligence operation. There's a lot more to it than just this, but what you did was you actually produced hard evidence. The other part of hard evidence that you might not be aware of were the Israeli art students who were arrested prior, during, and after 9/11. Did you hear about that matter?
Nope.
Well, there were over 200 Israelis who were posing as art students who were surveilling certain government individuals and offices and who were also living in close proximity to the alleged hijackers.
Right.
So that also fits into this whole thing. That's why when we were talking earlier and you said you're still getting emails from people. When you got the first one, do you remember what it said?
They all basically say the same thing. Are you the Scott DiCarlo that, you know, worked such and such a police department and did this on 9/11, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of thing. And do you know anything about the situation? Just inquisitive type of questioning, you know, like people want to know what I knew about what you're talking about here. And I responded to the first couple going, I really don't know anything. That is me, yeah, but check out my music. I don't know anything.
So 2002, approximately, you get the first one, and they've been coming in ever since, right?
Correct, yeah.
How often do they come in?
They stopped for a little while, and they trickle 2 or 3 here and there, and one here, one there, you know, and then recently, you know, I guess because of the 10-year anniversary of that dreadful day, I guess people are, you know, researching and that kind of thing. And I guess, you know, my police department's name will come up with the report or whatever, and obviously my name will be there. And I had a little influx, you know, in August of emails.
Mm-hmm. And when was the last one you got?
A couple of days ago.
Same thing, though, right?
Yeah, just inquisitive, you know, just looking to see if I have any knowledge about the situation.
Are there common themes in the emails that you get? Do a lot of them talk about Israel?
I've had a couple that say, hey, can you tell me, you know, were these Israelis, is there any truth to them being Mossad? Things like that. That's about it.
Did any of these emails ask to speak with you?
I've gotten a couple with phone numbers. You know, hey, give me a call. You know, I'd love to talk about it. The whole point of doing this interview with you is just so people stop contacting me because I don't have any information, you know, other than what we did on the side of the road, and that was minimal. We did nothing but put these guys in handcuffs and transport them to the jail cell, and then they were transferred custody.
So if you could talk to the listeners who want to email you, want to contact you, what would you tell them?
Man, call somebody else because I don't know anything. Stop emailing me. Stop messaging me on Facebook or MySpace, you know, because I don't know anything. You know, it's a situation that I don't know. I don't have the knowledge that, you know, people are looking for, and I would appreciate it if they'd stop contacting me.
So basically you would just wish that they leave you alone because there's nothing more you could tell them.
Yeah, I don't know, so...
Listeners, you heard it here first. No need to email Scott anymore because he doesn't know anything. You heard everything he knows. We talked about it. So this is it. I mean, this is the first and probably last interview he's ever going to give on the subject, I would imagine. Am I right, Scott?
That's correct.
So is there anything else in closing that you'd like to tell the listeners? Because I can guarantee you that this interview, because of the significance of it in the 9/11 legend and lore and the story, this interview will literally go around the globe, and I'm sure that millions of people will hear it. Is there anything you want to tell those people?
Visit the memorial. It's beautiful. Take the negative of that day and try and spin it for positive. You know, I don't really know what else to say.
Scott DiCarlo, police sergeant in New Jersey. I want to thank you so much for the time you spent explaining all this to the listeners, and looking forward to seeing you perform and speaking with you again.
Thanks, man. I look forward to it.
You're listening to The Corbett Report.
Some evil is just It can't be explained.
Are these people happy? Are they joyous now? Are they celebrating?
Oh, absolutely. They're
Thank
celebrating.
God.
There's one report. This has not been confirmed, but there's several live reports that there was a cell, one of these cells, across the Hudson River. And they got on the, this is the report. I emphasize, I don't know this for a fact, but there's several witnesses who say this happened. They got on the roof of the building to look across. They knew what was going to happen. Yeah. They were waiting for it to happen. And when it happened, they celebrated. They jumped for joy.
In the days after 9/11, while Ground Zero continued to smolder, millions heard Dan Rather and various media outlets repeat vague and unconfirmed reports of arrests that took place that day. These rumors held that Middle Eastern men, presumably Arabs, were arrested in explosive-packed vans in various places around the city on September 11th, and that some had even been photographing and celebrating those events. What most do not realize is that those reports were not mere rumors, and we now have thousands of pages of FBI, CIA, and DOJ reports documenting those arrests.
My binoculars, and I could see the towers from my window, and this is where I'm looking, and all of a sudden, down there, I see this van park, and I see 3 guys on top of the van, and I could see that they were like happy, they didn't look shocked to me, they didn't look shocked.
The men were spotted shortly after 8:46 a.m., yet somehow at this early stage, just minutes after the first plane strike on the World Trade Center, they were already positioned in a parking lot in Liberty State Park, taking pictures of the towers and celebrating. They left the scene shortly after being spotted, and at 3:31 p.m. the FBI issued an all-points bulletin advising officers in the greater New York area to be on the lookout for a white 2000 Chevrolet van with Urban Moving Systems sign on back. At 3:56 p.m., the van was spotted traveling eastward on State Route 3 in New Jersey and pulled over by Officer Scott DiCarlo and Sergeant Dennis Ravelli of the East Rutherford Police Department. Inside they found 5 men: Sivan Kurzberg and his brother Paul, Yaron Schmel, Oded Elner, and Omar Marmari.
A major terrorist manhunt began, and just 6 hours after the attack, the van was stopped at a roadblock by patrolman Scott DiCarlo.
We were asked to detain the van and the passengers. They were just removed from the vehicle, patted down for safety precaution, and detained.
911 call at 410 Park.
I think once the FBI arrived, one of them stated that they were on our side, something to that effect.
According to the police report of the incident, Sivan Kurzberg told Officer DiCarlo, "We are Israeli. We are not your problem. Your problems are our problems. The Palestinians are the problem." Their official story: they were just Israeli tourists working for a moving company who had heard about the first World Trade Center strike and rushed to get a better view of the events.
They told interrogators they were working for Urban Moving, a shipping and storage firm run by an Israeli businessman who often employed Israeli students without work permits. The men say there was an innocent explanation for what was found in the van and their behavior on 9/11. They were, they say, simply on a working holiday.
We heard in the news that one of the plane was crashing down the building, and we thought it was an accident at the beginning. So we went up to the roof of Urban Moving, and we saw the building burning.
There is a better view from a building in Jersey that is up a hill, a straight line to the World Trade Center. We decided to go up there. It's like 2-3 minutes from the office. Stand over there and take some pictures. Everyone wants a picture like this in his camera.
Although this narrative is still trotted out when the story of the dancing Israelis is raised in the media, it is an easily demonstrable lie. FBI reports confirmed that the men were not taking somber pictures of a horrific event. When their 76 pictures were developed, they revealed the men had indeed been celebrating, smiling, hugging each other, and high-fiving. One of the pictures even featured Sivan Kurzberg holding a lighter up with the burning tower in the background. And these were no ordinary tourists. Oded Elner had $4,700 stuffed into his sock. They lied to the police about where they had been that morning. They were carrying plane tickets for immediate departure to different places around the globe. The FBI confirmed that 2 of the men had ties to Israeli intelligence and came to suspect that they had indeed been on a mission for the Mossad. And of course, after returning to Israel, Elner claimed on national Israeli TV that they had been sent there to document the event.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
Their purpose was to document the event? But how could they possibly have known what event they were documenting at that point, before the second plane strike, when those few who even knew about the situation had assumed it to be an accident or pilot error? And when did they arrive at the parking lot to document the event anyway? The FBI reports show how the men gave confused and often conflicting accounts of when and how they learned about what was happening and when they arrived at the parking lot. Oded Elner even said they had arrived there shortly after 8 a.m., which would have been 45 minutes before the attacks even began. This is in line with one of the eyewitnesses that had placed their urban moving systems van at the parking lot at 8 a.m. How could they have been in place and ready to document the event unless they knew what was about to happen? Any way you cut it, this story is unbelievable. Men with documented connections to Israeli intelligence and working in the United States without appropriate permits were detained after having been caught celebrating the attack on the World Trade Center at a time when no one knew that the WTC strike was an attack. So surely these men are locked behind bars to this day, right? Surely they were transferred to Guantanamo and held without trial for 15 years as part of the war on terror, weren't they? No. They were immediately transferred to federal custody, held for 71 days, and then deported back to Israel. The owner of the urban moving systems company that had employed them, Dominic Suter, was investigated by the FBI too. They concluded that urban moving may have been providing cover for an Israeli intelligence operation, and even seized records and computer systems from the company's offices. When they went back to question him again on September 14th, he had fled back to Israel. And what about the dancing Israelis' pictures themselves? The Justice Department destroyed their copies on January 27, 2014. And these intelligence agents on an intelligence mission who were there to document the event of 9/11 before anyone knew 9/11 was taking place? Don't worry, they were just spying on Arab terrorists.
And while the FBI or certain sources might believe that in fact they were Israeli intelligence, they don't believe that the U.S. was a target, that they were actually investigating Muslim groups?
They believe if this was an intelligence operation by Israel, that it was focused on the Islamic groups and charities that raise money for groups that are considered by U.S. law enforcement and others terrorist groups. And you'll note that after September 11th, the U.S. moved on many of these groups with indictments, arrests, raids on their headquarters, something that hadn't happened prior to this.
These are groups that Israel believes have been funding Hamas and other terrorist organizations?
Groups that are responsible for most of the suicide bombings there.
But this story is not merely preposterous on its face. Even the implications of this story are themselves preposterous. If indeed the official story is a ridiculous lie, then are we to believe that these crack Israeli Mossad operatives, who were presumably aware of the attack that was about to take place, had been sent to photograph the burning tower from a parking lot across the Hudson River? And that these specially trained intelligence professionals on their super-secret mission were celebrating, high-fiving, and going out of their way to be noticed in performance of their task? This is equally preposterous. The only other possible conclusion is that these men were serving merely as a distraction, that they were not there to photograph for Israeli intelligence one of the most heavily photographed scenes in the world on that morning, but instead to be noticed and arrested as a way to divert attention from a much bigger and more sinister story. So if they were meant to distract from a bigger story, what story could that possibly be?
It has been more than 16 years since a civilian working for the Navy was charged with passing secrets to Israel. Jonathan Pollard pled guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage and is serving a life sentence. At first, Israeli leaders claimed Pollard was part of a rogue operation, but later took responsibility for his work. Now, Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S. who may have known things they didn't tell us before September 11th. Fox News correspondent Carl Cameron has details in the first of a four-part series.
Since September 11th, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained, either under the new Patriot anti-terrorism law or for immigration violations. A handful of active Israeli military were among those detained, according to investigators, who say some of the detainees also failed polygraph questions when asked about alleged surveillance activities against and in the United States. There is no indication that the Israelis were involved in the 9/11 attacks, but investigators suspect that the Israelis may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. A highly placed investigator said there are, quote, tie-ins, but when asked for details, he flatly refused to describe them, saying, quote, evidence linking these Israelis to 9/11 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It's classified information. Asked this week about another sprawling investigation and the detention of 60 Israelis since September 11th, the Bush administration treated the questions like hot potatoes.
I would just refer you to the Department of Justice with it. I'm not familiar with the report.
I'm aware that some Israeli citizens have been detained. With respect to why they are being detained and the other aspects of your question, whether it's because they are in intelligence services or what they were doing, I will defer to the Department of Justice and the FBI to answer that.
Beyond the 60 apprehended or detained and many deported since September 11th, another group of 140 Israeli individuals have been arrested and detained in this year in what government documents describe as, quote, an organized intelligence gathering operation designed to, quote, penetrate government facilities. Most of those individuals said they had served in the Israeli military, which is compulsory there, but they also had, most of them, intelligence expertise and either worked for Amdocs or other companies in Israel that specialize in wiretapping. Earlier this week, the Israeli embassy here in Washington denied any spying against or in the United States.
Carl, what about this question of advanced knowledge of what was going to happen on 9/11? How clear are investigators that some Israeli agents may have known something?
Well, it's very explosive information, obviously, and there's a great deal of evidence that they say they have collected, none of it necessarily conclusive. It's more when they put it all together. A bigger question, they say, is how could they not have known? Almost a direct quote, Britt.
The most phenomenal part of this report is not that it was eventually erased from the web by Fox News itself, but that it ever made it to the air at all. In December of 2001, Fox News investigative reporter Carl Cameron filed an explosive four-part series that went in-depth into an Israeli art student spying ring that had been under investigation before 9/11, extensive Israeli wiretapping of sensitive US government communications, and the 60 Israeli spies that were detained in the wake of the September 11th attacks. Unsurprisingly, the story was quickly dropped, and no mainstream journalists dared to continue probing into the matter. This is the real story of Israeli spies in 9/11. Not some vague rumors about some dancing Israelis, but an FBI dragnet that swept up the largest foreign spying ring ever caught red-handed on American soil. And although the FBI were convinced that these spies knew about 9/11 in advance, their investigations were stifled and the issue was swept under the rug. Rather than making Israel enemy number one in the war on terror, Israel remains to this day the US's most important ally.
And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected president, the United States will reaffirm we have a strong and enduring national interest in Israel's security.
In 2001, weeks after the attacks on New York City and on Washington, and frankly, the attacks on all of us, attacks that and they were perpetrated by the Islamic fundamentalists, Mayor Rudy Giuliani visited Israel to show solidarity with terror victims. I sent my plane because I backed the mission for Israel 100%.
But perhaps this is understandable. After all, we all remember how Yasser Arafat gloated about 9/11 and said it was good for Palestinians, right? Oh wait, that wasn't Yasser Arafat. It was Benjamin Netanyahu.
The Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv has reported Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly said the September 11th attacks have been good for Israel. Netanyahu said, quote, "We're benefiting from one thing. And that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq.
My name is Donald Trump, and I'm a big fan of Israel. And frankly, a strong prime minister is a strong Israel. And you truly have a great prime minister. In Benjamin Netanyahu, there's nobody like him. He's a winner. He's highly respected. He's highly thought of by all. And people really do have great, great respect for what's happened in Israel. So vote for Benjamin. Terrific guy, terrific leader, great for Israel.
Given that the ultimate consequence of 9/11 was the beginning of a now 15-year-long struggle to transform the Middle East, a struggle that the neocons that went on to populate the Bush administration had been openly advocating since the clean break policy paper in the mid-1990s, it isn't hard to see how the September 11th attacks were indeed a boon for Israel. But information linking Israeli spies to advanced knowledge of 9/11 remains classified information. In a world of true justice, the dancing Israelis and other Israeli spies with insider advanced knowledge of the 9/11 attacks, who openly celebrated those attacks, would be the targets of the war on terror, not its beneficiaries.
Some evil is just, it can't be explained.
Are these people happy? Are they joyous now? Are they celebrating?
Oh, absolutely. They're
Thank
celebrating.
God.
There's one report. This has not been confirmed, but there's...
I actually figure very largely in a number of the key conspiracy theories.
September 11th, September 11th. Terrorists or terrorism, September 11th.
This isn't just a film about 9/11 and the wars that followed. This isn't just about the lies from the press and the Pentagon. It's about our world and how information is conveyed and how prejudice is fostered by deception. About how we are subjected to indoctrination and used and pitted against one another. To understand the massive military expenditures and how they are eating up so much wealth, the first hurdles we have to get over are the trust in the mass media and the stigma associated with the concept of conspiracy. Every time the CIA or any other intelligence agency does a covert operation, that's a conspiracy. It's a bunch of people getting together in secret to do something illegal and lying to everyone else.
In the Gulf of Tonkin.
There are a lot of strange conspiracies about many things, but that is not a reason to reject conspiracies categorically. For example, the Iran-Contra affair was a massive government conspiracy, hidden from the press and public for years. It happened in my lifetime, and it involved billions of dollars in multiple countries. This was a case where one part of the government didn't even know what another part of the government was doing. Thousands of people were murdered. Multiple countries in Central America, as well as Iran and Israel, were involved. And yet it was kept as a total secret from the media, or perhaps by the media, for years. Not only was it possible to hide this from the public, but most of the government was unaware of the activities of a small cabal from within. Covert actions and deception in the press aren't irregular. They're normal. When patriots expose how blatantly obvious it is that there is a cover-up, regardless of how much evidence they have, the criminal's last refuge is to hide behind the stigma of conspiracy. They want you to ignore history in favor of belief based on authority. Purposely promoting the asinine obfuscates investigation, poisons credibility, and misdirects valuable time and research. State deception and conspiracy isn't rare, it's normal. Blindly believing your TV is irresponsible and it's stupid. There is nothing kooky or funny about covert warfare and assassinations. It deserves open scrutiny and sincere investigation. I'm going to show you some live clips about the truck bombings in case you never saw them, forgot about them, or don't believe me. And also pay attention to these live reports about explosions at the base, the lobby, the basement of the building. These are reports from eyewitnesses, survivors, firemen, police, and the FBI. This would all get a nice church-off whitewashing and be replaced by pancake theories on one extreme and disinformation ranging from everything from Bavarian death cults to space aliens on the other.
NBC's Pat Dawson is close to the scene of that attack. Pat?
Just moments ago, I spoke to the chief of safety for the New York City Fire Department. He received word of the possibility of a secondary device, that is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place. And then an hour after the first hit here, with the first crash that took place, he said, there was another explosion that took place in one of the towers here. According to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building. The second device, he speculates, was probably planted in the building.
That's what some people are saying. Now,
at the base of the South Tower.
I was under the impression that it was just the actual collapse of the building, but some people are speculating that. I mean, I didn't want to say that because...
There, though. Maybe they had that was an incredible.
That was an incredible explosion.
And that does not cause from a.
I agree with you. I think it was the third plane, but again,
no, it could have been something. It could have been something that was planted.
Or a bomb planted in the building.
But as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
And you were working there? Yes, I was right there. I was down in the basement, came down, all of a sudden the elevator blew up, smoke. I dragged the guy out, his skin was hanging off, and I dragged him out.
They saw an airliner going to one of those towers. Then, I don't know, an hour later than that, we had that big explosion from much, much lower. I don't know what on earth caused that.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact were the coup de grace to bring them to the ground.
Do we have Jim Smith available on microphone from Chopper 2 as he takes these pictures? Jim?
Yes, I am here, Michael.
Jim, tell us what's happening out there.
We just witnessed some kind of secondary follow-up explosion on the World Trade Center number 2, the one that is on the south that is difficult to make out.
As effective as a bomb being dropped there were two bombs in effect. Commercial airliners flown into those two buildings, and they came down. We presume because of the initial explosion, there may have been secondary explosions as well that were detonated in the building by these terrorists.
That would put us about a block and a half away from the site of where the explosion was. That area has just been evacuated because police have found what they described as a suspicious device, and they fear that it might be something that could lead to another explosion. Obviously, there's a real sense of caution here on the part of police. I spoke with some police officials moments ago, Chris, and they told me that they have reason to believe that one of the explosions at the World Trade Center, aside from the ones that may have been caused by the impact of the plane with the building, may have been caused by a van that was parked in the building that may have had some type of explosive device in it. So their fear is that there may have been explosive device planted either in the building or in the adjacent area.
Okay, I'm okay, all right? Here, no. You want to call your mother or something? Don't worry about me. You need to make calls right now.
We just heard another explosion. They're handing out gloves and masks.
I think a bomb went off in the lobby first, then a plane hit the building. But then another plane hit the other building. But when I was coming through the doors on the other side of the Trade Center, either they blew the lobby up or something, because it blew the glass out of the doors and knocked us all down, and I got smoke and everything on me. I just feel a little shook up because I got blasted, you know. So.
The ladies that are with me were in the World Trade Center in the first building and escaped through the lobby where they report they believe there was a bomb in the lobby. And even the turnstile was burnt and it was sticking up, and they just told us to run. And as we were coming out, we passed the lobby. There was no lobby. So I believe the bomb hit the lobby first, and a couple of seconds in the first plane hit. And all of a sudden, it sounded like, I don't know where the subway is, but it sounded like a subway collision, a bomb. And it was just pounding, boom, boom, boom. And I literally thought the subway had exploded and all the cars went on top of it. It was just so loud.
I was actually in the subway heading towards the World Trade Center right around Franklin Street. And after the first explosion, the subway station started to fill with smoke. The subway cars started to fill with smoke, and the subways actually stopped.
It was that he was in the lobby of World Trade Center 1
when the first plane hit. And when the debris started coming down, he went back to go into the building to protect himself and was in the revolving doors going back in off West Street when he looked up and a fireball came flying out and blew out all the windows and threw him back onto the street.
Once the plane hit the top, then that's when the bomb was going off for the first floor. It's like the plane was actually hitting the first floor. You was hearing boom, 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 boom.
Explosion that was in the World Trade Center at about 8:46 a.m. in the morning. The explosion came from, I believe, at first we believed that it came from the mechanical room. And then we heard a series of other explosions that sounded up on the above levels of the building, to where we then realized that there was something wrong and there was a major problem.
What happened? It was an explosion. He was in the lobby and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like? What was it like?
Horrible.
It's like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the plan, probably?
Yeah, definitely a secondary explosion. We was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on the way upstairs, the whole fucking thing blew. And we just collapsed on everybody inside the lobby.
Similar to the first tower coming down, secondary?
I don't know about the first one, but I know the second it was terrible. Then there was a third one, too, after that one.
Third explosion after that?
Yes. Everybody was inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. And they just let loose. Everything just let loose inside the building.
So what you told me is that there was a plane or whatever hit the building, and then a secondary explosion.
It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. Then they exploded. The whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside. Right in front of our eyes. Just it was so surreal, like a movie set.
Second and third explosions also, right?
We were in the building for the third one. It collapsed. It was on this drive here for the other one. This is on top of this. It couldn't be no worse than this. Couldn't be nothing no more worse than this. You're in the building trying to help people, and it's exploding on the inside the building. So I don't think we get any worse than this.
Joining me is Jack Kelly. Now, he is a foreign correspondent. He has some information about these attacks. Jack, what can you tell us happened first in New York?
Apparently what appears to happen was that at the same time 2 planes hit the building, that the FBI most likely thinks that there was a car or truck packed with explosives underneath the buildings, which also exploded at the same time and brought both of them down.
Now, that's the first time we're hearing that. So 2 planes and explosives that were in the building. Is that correct?
That is the working theory at this point. That is still unconfirmed, but that is what the FBI is going on at this point.
The New York City Police Department has a report that the FBI is responding to New Jersey because a truck reportedly loaded with explosives has been stopped by authorities on the road there, and the men with that truck have been detained. Members of the Joint Terrorist Task Force, according to the New York police officials, are responding to question those people. I want to underline that all the phones to police headquarters and to the FBI from here seem to be disabled.
They stopped the truck, they found an entire truck full of explosives, and they arrested them. Those 2 men and their explosives are in police custody tonight, and another tragedy has been averted.
Still alive in the rubble in and around the World Trade Center. And word late tonight that 2 suspects are in FBI custody after a truckload of explosives was discovered around the George Washington Bridge. That bridge links New York to New Jersey over the Hudson River. Whether the discovery of those explosives has anything to do with other events of the day is unclear, but the FBI has 2 suspects in hand, said the truck load of explosives, enough explosives were in the truck to do great damage to the George Washington Bridge. But they arrested the 2 suspects and they're questioning them as we speak.
And that it was near the George Washington Bridge. There were 2 or 3 men who were in the van. The van was pulled over. It is not clear why the van was pulled over, but when it was, law enforcers found tons of explosives inside of the van.
George Washington Bridge, Marcia.
Well, you know, Todd, it's really an amazing thing. Most of New York City's rescue operations and their police and fire departments have been concentrating their actions down in lower Manhattan, where the 2 planes hit the 2 towers of the World Trade Center. But some very intelligent and aggressive cops also stopped another terrorist attack from happening on the George Washington Bridge. CBS 2 has learned exclusively that 2 men are in custody tonight after being arrested at the George Washington Bridge with an entire truckload of explosives.
The FBI has now put out a nationwide APB all points bulletin for a white Chevy van with New Jersey registration. Written on the back is Urban Moving Systems.
There were at least 2, possibly 3 vans stopped by police on 9/11, and another 4th van spotted by a journalist. One had 5 individuals and traces of explosives. Another had 2 individuals and was packed with explosives. A 3rd van got away, and a 4th was possibly a diversion. The first van had been spotted earlier in Liberty State Park by a witness who saw 3 men celebrating and filming the World Trade Center attack. The timelines given by Sylvan Kirschberg and Paul Kirschberg, Yaron Schmel, Omar Mamari, and Oded Eldner were all over the place, and each had tickets to leave the U.S. with immediate travel dates to destinations all over the world. Oded Eldner, who had $4,700 stuffed in a sock, tried to lie to police about stopping for gas and claimed that he learned of the first explosion by telephone at 8 a.m. Problem being the first explosion wasn't until 8:45 a.m. Must have been a little nervous. Perhaps his greatest slip-up, though, was revealing that you could only see one side of one tower from the roof of Urban Moving Systems, so they moved to another spot with a full view of the length of both towers so that they could document the event. Eyewitnesses had seen them already on top of the roof of their van, posing and taking pictures, only 5 minutes after the first plane crash. Urban Moving Systems is at least 5 minutes away. They were already on the roof of a parking garage in place, looking at the north side of the North Tower, which is exactly where the plane impacted. From the police reports, we gathered a helicopter for the local radio station AM 880 can be seen in the foreground of one of the photographs taken by the dancing Israelis, and the FFA traffic records show it was hovering over the Hudson River between 8:50 and 9:03 a.m. The Israelis took 76 photographs, and eyewitnesses also saw them video recording the event. They can be visibly seen smiling. Sylvan Kirschberg is even shown flicking a green lighter as if he was at a rock concert. Interestingly, Sylvan Kirschberg had been spotted in the Doric Towers the day before on 9/10/2001. He lied to 2 men in an elevator and said that he was a construction worker. He was positively identified in the police lineup. Both Doric Tower and the World Trade Centers were highlighted on maps of the area found in the van at the time of their arrest, and Sylvan admitted to the FBI polygrapher that he had been a map maker in Israel. Why would they have maps of New York with the World Trade Centers highlighted, as well as the place they were going to film and take pictures of the event from? Sylvan was also the driver that babbled on about Palestinians without any provocation to the police at the time of their arrest, and Yaron Schmel also lied to the police about their whereabouts, claiming that they were on the west side in New York on 9A.
The story that the feds build is a very good story. When you hear their story, you start even to believe it inside. Okay, maybe I'm a spy. I'm sure that I'm not, but the story is so good, so maybe I am.
Because of the timestamp of the bolo, as well as reports from the New York Times and Fox, we know these men had been filming the entire event, which shows prior knowledge. Because of the matching license plates, we know that this is the same van later pulled over on Route 3 in East Rutherford by police. It had 5 individuals. Now either the witness from Liberty State Park had not seen 2 of the men, or the 3 she did see had picked up 2 more. They were all Israelis, and had taken pictures of themselves flicking lighters with the burning World Trade Center in the background. The second plane had not even hit, and many assumed the first was a bizarre accident, but not these excited Israelis. They knew. Their van was traced back by its logo, Urban Moving Systems, to a front for the Israeli Mossad, Israel's CIA. 2 of the 5 men arrested's names popped up on the CFI and FBI's database as known Israeli agents. They had over $4,700 stuffed inside a sock and highlighted maps of New York and New Jersey. It gets even more interesting when the live reports report truck bombings as well as arrests. And then this suddenly disappears from the media and the American conscience. Instead, we are fed images of dancing Palestinians. It's funny how Palestinians were featured dancing on every single channel when this was a false prepackaged tape, and yet the Israelis who actually were dancing on 9/11 never see airtime. The dancing Israelis who were working for Mossad front company Urban Moving Systems get caught in a van with traces of explosives. They were filming the 9/11 attacks in New York with the planes crashing into the buildings before it happened. So they just decided to set up a film on that particular day, driving around in a van that had traces of explosives, and they just strolling through, put a camera, let's point at the World Trade Center for no particular reason, just in case something happens. And then, of course, 9/11 happens. After the police pulled them over and demanded they get out of the vehicle, this is what happened, and I'll quote from Counterpunch. The driver, 23-year-old Sylvan Kurtzberg, refused and was asked several more times, but appeared to be fumbling with a black leather fanny pouch type of bag. With guns drawn, the police physically removed Kurtzberg, while 4 other men, 2 more men had apparently joined the group since the morning, were also removed from the van, handcuffed, placed on the grass medium, and read their Miranda rights. They had not been told the reasons for their arrest. Yet, according to DiCarlo's report, this officer was told without question by the driver, "We are Israeli. We are not your problem. Your problem are our problems. The Palestinians are the problem." Another of the 5 Israelis again, without prompting, told the officers, falsely, that we were on the West Side Highway in New York City during the incident. Why did they automatically assume they were being pulled over because of something to do with 9/11? Why did Yarin lie to the police without being prompted and say they were on the west side of New York when 9/11 happened, when we know they were not, as they were witnessed filming the first plane hitting and celebrating the attack, taking pictures of themselves and flicking lighters up in the air? What exactly were they hiding? They obviously knew the attack was happening. They were thrown in jail and they failed their polygraph test, but eventually they were deported back to Israel. Other Israeli spies were busted in several other states as well as Mexico, but nothing ever comes of it. Once they get arrested, the higher-ups always swoop in and deport them for visa violations. Some of the lower FBI and police are furious about this, but there's really nothing they can do about it. This event, damning as it is, has had a Lewinsky-style distraction effect, pulling attention away from the far more damning van stopped near the George Washington Bridge packed with explosives. Aside from eyewitnesses, the van bombs and arrests were reported by ABC News, CBS, CNN, Haaretz, the Jerusalem Post, Fox News, USA Today, the Wall Street Journal, the police themselves, Army Radio, several New Jersey papers, and so forth. Urban Moving Systems was only one of several fronts working that day, which also had prior access to the towers. These were not the only 2 mysterious set of vans stopped on 9/11. There was a 3rd truck, which was obviously a diversion, on King Street, which actually depicted a mural of a plane slamming into the World Trade Centers. And those 2 individuals were arrested. Obviously, this was a diversion to pull police in that direction, because no one would drive around in a truck with a painting of 9/11 on it on 9/11, unless they were purposely trying to attract the attention of the police, to pull them in a certain direction.
With a mural painted of an airplane diving into New York City and exploding. I don't know what's in the truck. The truck is in between 6th and 7th on King Street. All right, Jeff, I'll send the issue in the bomb squad there for Westgate. The bird? Airplane diving into New York, blowing up. 2 men got out of the truck, ran away from it. We got those 2 under. That's good. Listen, you didn't get any further on those 2 guys over there. You all right over there, Jake? Yeah, both suspects under K. We have the suspects who crib. Go in the van and then...
There was also an emergency 911 telephone call reporting that Palestinian bomb makers in a white van were headed for the Holland Tunnel. Unless they had a flag or something, I'm not sure how the caller would be able to tell if they were Palestinian or not. The caller, using poor English, said, "I see them at the airport mixing something, and they were dressed like sheiks, dressed like an Arab." This would have fit well with propaganda aired later in the day of dancing Palestinians celebrating the attacks on 9/11, which turned out to be a false tape. Of course, the only people driving around in vans for an intelligence agency who actually were celebrating the attacks and were caught dancing were Israelis, and the first words out of the driver's mouth were, "We're Israelis, we're not your problem, Palestinians are the problem." Apparently this idiot hadn't put it together that the plan hadn't worked out as smoothly as they had hoped. Glenn Ford also spotted another van with two individuals speaking Hebrew and taking pictures of the towers. The van must have been in the park before or just as the towers were hit, because the park was closed after the first tower was hit. It was one of the only vehicles remaining in the park. The two men lied and said they were Polish. The Israelis arrested on 9/11, who were driving around in vans that were a front for the Mossad, were detained and interrogated. They all failed their polygraph test. However, they were released by Chertoff and deported back to Israel and left alone. The owner of the Urban Moving Systems warehouse, Dominic Suter, along with his wife, fled back to Israel. The FBI raided the complex and confiscated over a dozen computer hard drives. This is a man who got a $500,000 loan just prior to 9/11, only for that year. And the FBI listed him as an official suspect of 9/11. And he remains a suspect. We got these leaked from Cryptomy. We also have copies of the Polish and Italian transcripts. But you definitely wouldn't have heard this on the mainstream media. He was allowed to return to Israel, and they have no interest in letting him go, and the press isn't going to push for it. The FBI classified what they confiscated from the hard drives, and more than likely is sitting on the infamous S drive to protect itself from any Freedom of Information Act inquiries. From looking into Suter's financial records, we found that not only did the Mossad get him the loans for Urban Moving System, but also Aero trucks, all of which were involved in the 9/11 attacks. That's not reported. The truck bombs are never followed up on, and the massive spy ring is never aired. How did the Israelis know what was going to happen? What happened to the truck bombers? Why were the reports of the truck bombs never brought up again, and the investigations into the spy rings never got airtime? Why is that? Well, I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for the U.S. media to do an in-depth report about it. Anything that can involve Israel is off limits. They won't even report on a 40-year, very open, very verifiable military occupation of racial colonization and ethnic cleansing that could make conquistadors blush.
Rarely do I produce a video summary of an investigation that I hope will attract attention from the very subject of the video or a U.S. law enforcement agency. However, this video begs for such an outcome. You see, what I'm about to show you is about a person who was once and may still be wanted by the FBI for questioning related to his involvement in the 9/11 attacks. What may surprise you, among other tantalizing discoveries, is that this person is highly visible and can easily be found by a U.S. agency or the FBI were they interested. I'll also show you very convincing evidence that this isn't a case of mistaken identity. Some of the evidence actually includes both covert and overt references to the 9/11 attacks and related subjects. The person who is the subject of this video is one Dominic Suter. And don't worry if the name doesn't ring a bell, as I'm about to jog your memories right now. The story begins in 1996 at a company called Urban Moving Systems, which was located at 3 West 18th Street in Weehawken, New Jersey. Note first how close this address is to Ground Zero in Lower Manhattan. When we look at the address today, we see that whatever buildings stood at that location have been demolished, leaving not much really. The business once stood where the arrow is shown on the left or the arrow on the right. I wasn't able to confirm this, but this photo has been reported by a few independent researchers as being the location back in 2001. Fast forward to September 2001, and it was in this location that the FBI was conducting an investigation, confiscating many boxes of documents, 15 computers, and a network server. Dominic Suter's own lawyer confirms that Dominic was the owner of Urban Moving Systems and that the FBI did question him in late September. But a few days later, when the FBI wanted to interview Mr. Suter again, he was gone. All of this is confirmed by the New Jersey Department of Law and Public Safety. Producers from ABC's 2020 report to have gained access to the company sometime in December 2001 and reported that the business appeared clearly to have shut down in a hurry. Cell phones and personal effects were lying around. The phones were still connected with hundreds of messages waiting. There were job applications still to be processed, and the property of dozens of families packed in the warehouse. Dominic Suter moved out of his New Jersey home in a hurry too, only having time to put it up for sale. Shortly after, New Jersey Attorney General John J. Farmer Jr. and Division of Consumer Affairs Director Mark S. Herr announced that they had obtained a court order giving inspectors from Consumer Affairs access to the facility, allowing consumers access to retrieve their goods and belongings. The state at the same time filed a lawsuit in Hudson County Superior Court against Urban Moving Systems and its owner Dominic Suter, alleging violations of both the state's Consumer Fraud Act and regulations set forth in the Public Movers and Warehousing Licensing Act. I couldn't find any results of the suit, but did find many reports that Suter had fled to Israel. But if you weren't already familiar with Suter and Urban Moving Systems, by now you're probably very curious to learn what the big deal was and why Suter was even being linked at all to 9/11. I'll start explaining that by reminding you of the purported dancing Israelis. Whether any Israelis were dancing atop a white van and celebrating the destruction of the World Trade Center or not, they were confirmed by the FBI to have existed and to be employees and contractors of Urban Moving Systems. Cutting more to the chase, the company was also almost certainly a Mossad front company. The FBI's largely redacted report on just the dancing Israelis alone is close to 1,800 pages in length. And if that weren't enough to rattle your common sense, one of the company's vans stopped by police on 9/11 was found to contain explosives residue. But it was one van in particular that simply can't be explained except as confirmation that Suter had been acutely aware of the 9/11 attack plans well in advance of the event. The following is a portion of the transcribed text and audio of an emergency dispatch radio transmission from 9/11.
Negative. Give an update plane. Spencer, I got a message on that plane. It's a big truck with a mural painted of an airplane diving into New York City and exploding. I don't know what's in the truck. The truck is in between 6th and 7th on King Street. I'll send the issue in the bomb squad there for Westgate.
Although there are a few images on the web depicting such a van with a mural as described, they are revealed to be only visual simulations. I have never actually seen an image of any such van, but the audio transmission appears to be authentic, and as such, it's extremely curious to say the least. But it gets weirder. The van appears to have exploded. Let's now look at a portion of what was reported in the Mineta Transportation Institute report, Lessons Learned in the 9/11 terrorist attacks. In it, there is the following transcribed police audio transmission.
We got both suspects under, K. We have the suspects who drove in the van. The van exploded. We have both of them under, K. Let's get some help over here.
When researchers went over the audio transmissions from 9/11, they learned that two, quote, Middle Eastern, unquote, suspects ran away from and then detonated a bomb in the mural van and were then apprehended. It was clear to them that both were arrested by police and perhaps beaten. Later, they are confirmed to have been allowed passage to Israel. But returning to the MTI report, it reads, fearing that it might be a truck bomb, the New York Police Department immediately evacuated the area, called out the bomb squad, and detained the occupants until a thorough search was made. The vehicle was found to be an innocent delivery truck. So, although the official account makes no mention of an explosion, it does confirm the presence of a bomb squad. Other urban moving systems vans were stopped that day as well, yet bomb squads were not dispatched in those cases. At this point, I think that Dominic Suter's involvement in the 9/11 attacks on a strategic and criminal level has been well established. But just for good measure and to fill in some gaps that might be helpful for viewers of this video, I'll reference a few other passages from the unredacted portion of the FBI report. Relevant to the day-to-day operations of urban moving systems, we see the following. A former Urban Moving Systems employee that later contacted the Newark division with information indicating that he had quit his employment with Urban Moving Systems due to high amount of anti-American sentiment among Urban's employees. The former employee stated that an Israeli employee of Urban had even once remarked, "Give us 20 years and we'll take over your media and destroy your country." Continuing from another testimony from one of the company's employees, the other helpers all seemed to be Russian, Hungarian, and Israelis. They always spoke in Hebrew in his presence. He also advised that those other foreign nationals and blank of the company blank had frequent meetings in the company's office, and he and the other non-Jewish employees were never invited to join them. From the FBI's account of the photographs confiscated from Urban employees stopped by police on 9/11, we see FBI NK developed the film, which had several photos of the World Trade Towers with smoke coming out of at least one of the towers. Since the volume and density of the smoke did not seem to be very great, it appeared that the photographs were taken at a very early stage in the WTC event. Also interesting to note is that one of the white vans operated by Urban was stopped, and the occupants were clearly not intent on being truthful when questioned. Most notably, when asked where they were going, they replied that they were headed to a pickup of furniture and belongings, which as a moving company made sense. When asked specifically where, they began giving vague responses, but after further questioning were unable to actually provide an address. Had they not been stopped and were merely heading to a pickup as usual, they wouldn't have been very successful. Lastly, relating to the vans and their occupants, the FBI also confiscated a travel itinerary for one of the arrested Urban employees. The dates for travel were highly suspicious given the timeline of the 9/11 attacks. It shows that on the 15th of June, this person departed from Tel Aviv, Israel, ending up in Athens, Greece. The itinerary doesn't contain arrival destinations or times, but we can suppose that from Athens they departed on June 15th for New York. Then, a flight was scheduled to depart New York on September 12th for Athens and on to Tel Aviv. I think it's an absolutely reasonable conclusion that this itinerary is likely that of someone with foreknowledge of the 9/11 attacks. I deem myself an expert in the research of the 9/11 conspiracy, which I cannot claim about nearly any other topic. So it's with a deep understanding and awareness of the phenomenon that I can make a few assessments. First, it should be at least known that I suspect that 9/11 was not a crime in and of itself, but rather a cover-up crime for the primary purpose of covering up a lengthy chain of former crimes. That's as in-depth an assessment I'll give in this presentation relative to the event's purpose. But I also think it's relevant to note my experience that the 9/11 event details have always been notoriously cloaked under the guise of national security. So I don't find it unusual at all that there's apparently little reported about the investigating agency's interests in Dominic Suter. In other words, whatever happened to the FBI's interest in Suter and what they themselves show to be clear points of connection to the conspiracy. And I want to be clear that the FBI is confirmed to have been very interested in Suter. Both Finnish and Italian authorities provided American journalists with a list they had been given by the FBI. The list contained the names of suspected terrorists and collaborators wanted for questioning or extradition under suspicion of involvement in the 9/11 attacks. The list contained the name Dominic Otto Suter, his social security number, the birth year 1970, and list of known addresses. The addresses included 28 Harlow Crescent Road, Fair Lawn, New Jersey, 312 Pavonia Avenue, Jersey City, New Jersey, and 15,000 Dickens Street, Suite 11, Sherman Oaks, California. Also on the list was a Ornette Levinson, alias Ornette Suter. That name was shown connected to the same 3 addresses as Dominic Suter and having the same birth year of 1970. Are we to assume that the many remaining questions were answered sufficiently to satisfy the FBI that he was not involved in 9/11? You know, I'll just bet that they make that exact claim. But what's probably a more likely scenario is the FBI and all other agencies with a stake in the event will simply remain silent or even refuse to provide any further information. And therein lies the rub. You yourself, having learned what I've just presented, could hardly believe that our speculations are just that, and that Suter is not a criminal 9/11 conspirator. And yet, despite that, without the aid of the authorities responsible for resolving this gross injustice, you are left with few options other than to live with known 9/11 criminals doing Lord knows what. Which brings me to the remaining question. What is Dominic Suter up to these days? Surely he hasn't been involving himself in other international crimes or conspiracies. So let's take a look. I told you that he can be easily found. All that it took me was to do a simple search on the web. A Google search for the name Dominic Suter turns up a LinkedIn result on the first page of results. That profile includes the overview, DDoS, which is denial of service, protection plus cybersecurity expert, 24/7 hotline, chat now, Skype, Dominic.Suter, presumably his Skype account name, DDoS/growth hacker for startups. One of the companies he's listed as being affiliated with is Impervia Encapsula. Here's the company website. A search for the name Suter there returns no results. But we see listed under management a Yaniv Shea, who is shown to have served in the Intelligence Technology Unit of the Israel Defense Forces as an officer and system engineer. He also earned an MBA cum laude from Tel Aviv University. The only other professional named Dominic Suter shown on the page has the same profile photo. When we look at the listing, we see an overview reading Chief Detonator at Kickoff Agency. When we visit the website of that company, Suter is referenced in a meetup notice. Come to our next meetup, Trends in Visual Content Marketing, a free presentation on Wednesday, November 25th, 2015. Google Campus TLV 98 Yigal Elon Street, Floor 34, Electra Tower, Tel Aviv. Trends in visual content marketing, videos, infographics, images, and more. How do they impact your startups, Growth Hacking, Marketing and Sales, Strategies and Ops. Presenters Dominic Suter and Tamar Weiss. Now, I thought that after finding not much else through internet searches or the research of other investigators, I might have reached a dead end. That would not have been unusual, and I had learned a lot about Suter's professional activities. But after a little more digging, I came upon an almost shocking twist. Sure enough, true to the nature of intelligence operatives' tendencies, Suter has what appears to be an almost alternate life. I found on a Swiss site called Backpack and Camper an article featuring one Dr. Dominic Suter. The version I'm presenting now is actually the result of Google Translate, so the translation is only approximate, but I will read a few segments in order to show how strikingly different this Suter seems to be. The first strange difference is the added title, Doctor. One would assume that a moniker and professional background of that type would have been almost certainly featured on one's LinkedIn profile, but it's the first time I'm seeing it used. The article reveals that Suter is apparently the CEO of motorhome and caravan manufacturer Deathlefs. The article further reads, the avid recreational athletes, including Delta flies, and self-confessed workaholic, is facing more than 800 employees and is responsible for an annual turnover of more than 300 million euros. His Lebensphilosophy, success does not tolerate half-heartedness. The 44-year-old Swiss has a doctorate in law, married with 2 children. It all seems to check out that this is, in fact, the same Dominic Suter. There's also the odd but interesting mention of Delta flies, and the FBI report, as well as research of a few other investigators, agreed that he was or had been married with 2 children. But it still seems like a remote possibility that this is merely another person with the same name and remarkably similar personal demographics. So I recalled that both LinkedIn profiles included a picture of Suter. Finding another article about Suter, the CEO of Deathlefs, with a more appropriate photo for comparison, I placed them side by side, and what do you know? He's our man. Although, talk about workaholic, he seems almost to be living 2 lives simultaneously. I decided to dig deeper into the Swiss Suter with a doctorate in law and CEO of a motorhome manufacturer. And that led me to this. It was at this point that I felt much more sure that Suter is indeed a field intelligence operative operating internationally, and likely for Israel and possibly the Swiss. Here we see Suter listed on the Swiss Confederation Army's website with the title Oberstist Dominic Suter, apparently an officer in Infantry Brigade 7. Recall that Urban Moving Systems in America was founded by Suter in 1996. However, we see here under military career that Suter has been in Swiss military service continuously from 1997 to the present time, now as a commander. What the hell, people? I know this world is upside down and turned inside out, but how are we to accept all of this without demanding some answers? Does anyone think the U.S. intelligence and military apparatus has been simply either outsmarted or lacks the global authority to find and capture Suter on behalf of everyone suffering as a result of the 9/11 fiasco? I doubt that. No, the reasonable conclusion is that the U.S. authorities are aware of Suter's activities since before 9/11 and perfectly happy that we're not demanding his capture. I'm no spring chicken or overly sensitive to the harsh reality of our decaying society, but I'm somewhat overwhelmed to have to add this to the already enormous pile of ugly truths. So I ask you, the viewer, in whatever capacity you're in and with whatever abilities you have, to decide for yourself if you could and if you should help in some way. Are you fed up and twitching to get active in some way, armed with this information? It surely can't be done by any individual, but maybe you have ideas as to how to form a group that would stand a chance of getting some action taken here. This is definitely one of those mini investigations that, if dropped, will likely leave me feeling dirty. But that doesn't change the fact that I don't know what the best course of action is at this point. Maybe you do. If so, feel more than welcome to contact me, and I will provide whatever help I think I can. Or if you have ideas you prefer to pursue through other channels, then Godspeed. And at minimum, thank you for watching this presentation.